All right, welcome back to the Copywriters Podcast with your host, the world's greatest copywriting coach, David Garfinkel. David, how are you doing today?
Nathan, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good and I'm excited. I think we're breaking a record. We're breaking two records today with a return guest and with a new twist on an old favorite. So I'm going to turn it over to you with that.
Sounds good. You're right. Our returning champion is Joshua Lee Henry, and this is a first. He's going to do a guest Old Masters series show. Of course, the Old Masters series are very popular. Joshua asked me if he could take a new look at the work of John Caples, the great copywriter and author and copy chief. And I said, okay, as long as he talked about something different than what we have talked about on the many shows we've already done on Caples. And Joshua put together a collection of unique items that filled the bill. So I'm really happy to bring him back for this special show. As you may remember, Joshua is a high powered copywriter and copy chief for Agora. He started his copywriting career 13 years ago, writing fundraising letters for the victims of the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. Joshua has been a pastor of a megachurch and a freelancer and has written for such famous clients as Jay Abraham, Brian Tracy, and the Zig Ziglar Corporation. Today, we're going to find out what he discovered digging into the archives of John Caples. But first, I would like you to discover this. Copy is powerful. You're responsible for how you use what you hear on this podcast, and most of the time, common sense is all you need. But if you make extreme claims and or if you're writing copy for offers in highly regulated industries like health, finance, and business opportunity, you may want to get a legal review after you write and before you start using your copy. My larger clients do this all the time, and I believe Josh and his writers do that at Agora. Yeah. So, Joshua, welcome back and thanks for preparing all this carefully selected material.
Absolutely, David. So glad to be here. I have been a fan of the Old Master series since the podcast started, and it's always been my dream to be a guest on an Old Masters episode. So thank you, and happy to get going. So
All right, well let's do that. You have, I think, 6 lessons. What's the first one?
yeah, I have 6 lessons, and to really dive into new material, what I did is I went through all 6 of John Caples' books. Most people are familiar with the book Tested Advertising Methods, and I would recommend the fourth edition, which is still available. I do have a copy of the second edition, but I went and have spent a tremendous amount of money and time and work researching and finding first edition copies of his other books that many people have never even heard of before. And so I'm excited to get into those lessons, but to begin, I want to start with the familiar, and most people know about tested advertising methods. And one of the things that I want to draw out is that as you look at this book here, the original subtitle was How to Profit by Removing the Guesswork. And really, that's the foundational lesson. If you're talking about Caples, you're talking about copy tactics and tips, you have to talk about testing. And you remove the guesswork and you become more profitable. And so what John suggests is that there's 4 things you must test. And this really is direct response 101. Those 4 things, though, are where to advertise, the medium, when to advertise, what to say in the advertisements, and the appearance of the advertisements. And so it's basic copy, testing headlines, which we know John obviously did more of than perhaps anybody else in the history of copywriting. But then also what mediums, back then it was direct mail, space ads, newspapers, journals, catalogs, things like that. Today, it's a lot of online stuff. Direct mail is not dead. There's certainly room for offline advertising and copy, but really understanding where your audience is and the best way to reach them is foundational to having any kind of a successful promotion. That's really where I want to start, is that at the foundation with Caples, you have to start with testing. The fifth element that I would add would be to test the offer. And of course, we've done a couple of podcasts on offers. And so I've got those 10 commandments of compelling offers. It's more than just the price, but you want to look at the price. I'll give you an example. In the financial world where I write with Agora, we launched a back end recently and we tested 2 price points, a $24.95, 2000 $495 product and a $1995 product. That's $500 difference. The $24.95 product actually outperformed the $1995 product. And so if you've got a $500 variance in price and you don't test those, that's a lot of money you could be leaving on the table by not testing that higher price point. Obviously, there are other things you can do to sweeten the pot on that offer, things like guarantees and bonuses and premiums. We did another offer where we tested giving away a free Apple Watch versus a offer without the Apple Watch. Of course, the Apple Watch won. It was a minimal cost on our side for a much greater benefit of that customer acquisition. And so you want to look at testing things. To begin any conversation with John Caples, you have to start testing. And really, that's the very first sentence in the first chapter of his book. He says that the most difficult things to discover in the study of advertising are facts. And then he goes on to outline those 4 areas. So that's testing advertising methods.
Yeah, that's great. And I have often quipped that people don't often understand the difference between facts and opinions, but in this particular case, yeah, you got to dig sometimes to find out what's real and what's consistent over a statistically large enough sample to make it real. So, okay, great, thank you. That's awesome way to start. But what you got next?
The next book I want to review is called Advertising for Immediate Sales. Now, this was originally published in 1936, and this is, I would say, perhaps John Caples' least known book. But
Yeah,
in this book, yeah, and by the way, I spent about $365 on this book, so it was a good business write-off. But in Advertising for Immediate Sales, John talks about how to secure testimonials, and the lesson is to run some kind of a contest, giveaway, competition, or a customer engagement survey where they actually provide you, testimonials up front that you can then repurpose and reuse in your marketing. And this is a tactic that I don't see used often, but one that once I learned it in this book, I have used in almost every single promotion I've had with Agora.
how's it work?
It works great. It works great. In fact, I just was thinking about this. I just used this tactic on my most recent promotion. Since March of 2020, I've launched 7 financial promotions. 4 of those have done at least $1 million. 2 of those that have done multi-million dollars have used this tactic. And the way that I use it, I'll give you one example. We launched a back-end stock picking service where we were promising gains of 1,000% in a year, which is astronomical. That's a 10x fortune. And so what we did was, leading up to the launch of the promotion, we built a hot list where we asked our audience how they would spend an extra $100,000 this year. And we put that up, and the psychology behind it is great because people are future pacing themselves into already having that benefit, into already receiving that money and those profits. And they are now committing themselves because they psychologically, they've committed to that benefit. And so they've bought in to the idea of that promise, which, belief and buying into the promise is key. And then the advertising. And so it has worked very well. We just did it again in another promotion that we have launching in a week, where we asked people what their biggest concerns and excitements were for 2023. And the cool thing is we got just a bunch of different responses all across the board. But what we've been able to do is we've been able to highlight those responses in our editorial build up to this promotion. And we're able to use a lot of that stuff as kind of quasi testimonials. It's like when you go to the how do you spend $100,000 in a year? We were able to show in the promotion, John said he would buy a new boat. Susie said she would pay off her granddaughter's student loans. Jim said he would, pay off his house, and things like that. And it's almost like future testimonials because it's creating social proof. It's creating this FOMO where you see everybody being involved and you want to be involved, and you start thinking, what can I do with $100,000? It also recognizes the good behavior of your audience and your customer base by reinforcing that engagement, which you always want people to be engaged and involved in your marketing. And I use this tactic in basically almost every promotion I try to write. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it, and it's different from what I would have expected because you're not asking them to give a testimonial about the product. You're asking them to buy into the dream and share with you their thoughts and what they're feeling. I love that idea. Very different.
I don't even know what you would call that, David. It's not really a testimonial. It's almost like a customer comment or customer, dream, aspiration or
Yeah.
prospect. But it works really good. The third idea, this is the lesson, and it comes from Advertising Ideas, one of John's books from 1938. And it's great because there is what he does. This is a very unique book where he breaks down his favorite advertisements over the last couple of years. For people on YouTube, they can see this. If you're listening, you might want to go check out the YouTube video. But what John does is he outlines these advertisements and explains what makes them work, which is amazing. And the particular ad that I want to highlight here for this lesson is the headline is "I gambled 3 cents and won $35,840 in 2 years." The headline says, "I gambled 3 cents, and won $35,840 in 2 years." The lesson here is that he is appealing to the lazy instinct. Appealing to the lazy instinct. And as a financial copywriter myself, I saw this. I thought, wow, three cents into 36 grand in 2 years. That's insane. But I have a saying that sometimes people maybe are put off when they hear it or offended, but I think it's generally true. And that's simply that people are bored, lazy, and selfish. In general, people are bored, lazy, and selfish. And you know what? They want to be smart, rich, and popular, or powerful. There's a difference between popular and powerful, but that status above others is really the key. They want that status above others. And, we know that one of the ways that people measure status in our culture is through wealth and money. And money is the second most common appeal that John discovered worked in successful advertisements. The first successful appeal that he discovered in all of his analysis of advertisements was self-preservation, protection and survival, kind of the Maslow, hierarchy of needs type stuff. After that base level is covered, by far, it is, wealth and riches and money. And so it's, the reason why the three, greatest niches in direct response have always been, health, wealth, and romance usually, people have those needs. And so John goes on to explain why this ad worked. He noticed the words gambled and won. It suggests that the method is easy, that you don't have to work, that there's no risk involved, that you don't have to learn anything or do anything. Gambled, it's kind of like that lottery ticket mindset. People want easy solutions to complicated problems. And we see this everywhere. We see this in health with weight loss and diet pills. We see this with, business opportunity, where you don't have to have a business. You don't have to have a product. You don't have to have a customer list. Just buy this inventory and, you'll make $100 million overnight. And then we see this especially in stock market services and trading services in the financial world. And so, people want easy. People are lazy. It is, I think that if you get down to the heart of it, in general, people are lazy. And I saw something, David, that I just couldn't believe was real. People are so lazy today, as a matter of fact, that there is now on the market a self-making bed. Have you heard about this?
No, you're kidding.
People are so lazy today in 2023 that they don't have time to make their bed in the morning. That's the classic, you make your bed. Your mom tells you to make your bed. If you make your bed, you'll feel productive for the day. Well, they have a product now, and I just want to read this copy as a current example of this principle in use. It says, convert your existing bed into a dual zone, climate-controlled, self-making bed using your current bed and bedding. Smart Duvet, the company, will have you sleeping in perfect comfort every night without having to worry about making your bed in the morning. I don't know many people that worry about making their bed. Maybe somebody with severe anxiety or depression,
I don't worry about it. Either I do it or I don't. Most of the time I do it. It takes 2 minutes. I don't get it. Okay.
And it appeals again that you don't have to buy anything. This duvet, which I don't even understand how this works, you don't have to have a new bed. You don't have to have new covers. We'll give you this special device and it'll do it for you. I can't see how comfortable that would be to sleep in at night, but it is what it is. There are all kinds of things. There are even products for battery operated self-cutting scissors. So people are lazy. The fourth lesson comes from a book from 1957 called Making Ads Pay. There is a paperback version of this available, very fairly priced on Amazon. It's been reprinted. I would suggest you go and get it if you're a fan of Caples. But this is a great lesson, he says. It's the value of an illusion. And the example I want to give from John, and when you hear that at first, you think, what does that mean? Really, what he's describing is selling the dream, appealing to the emotional and psychological desires of your market, creating a visual transformation for that prospect when they buy your product, inspiring the good feelings that will come with the purchase, and future pacing that prospect, through the copy. And so the example that John says comes from page 54, and he's talking about this value of illusion. He calls it the lesson, actually, the lesson of value of illusion. When Mrs. Brown buys a pair of gloves for $5.95, made to sell for $10, she's a little happier. She can be a little prouder and hold her head just a little higher when she puts those gloves on because they were made to sell for $10. Nobody has to tell her that they were only worth $5.95, but she believes they were worth more. That's what you call the illusion, and life is full of illusions. And again, I just love that because it's not so much about the words that you use in copy necessarily. What it's about is tapping into that desire, as Gene Schwartz said, channeling that desire, tapping into your prospects, fears, beliefs, desires, wants, dreams, and aspirations, and channeling those with your copy. And so you can do that with future pacing. I saw a wonderful email that does exactly this just last night, actually. The subject line was Instagram made flesh, and I didn't really know what that meant, but it got my attention. And the copy starts out: a 90-minute flight from Miami on a jungle beach of fine white sand. Instagram has been made flesh. The Riviera Maya on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula is an Eden that formerly existed only on the social media accounts of hip young women in maxi dresses, but now it's a reality here on Earth. And it goes on to describe this future pacing, this story really. This was for an Agora company, and Bill Bonner, the founder of Agora, created Agora through a travel company, through International Living. And if you go back and you read that sales letter, it follows the same blueprint of the example I just read, where you are future pacing the reader in this wonderful experience where you're talking about the lush garden and the beautiful beach and the warm sand between your toes and this lifestyle of the rich and famous that you can have. You can have it, by joining this club or buying this product, and they end when they say, welcome to travel and opportunity. We travel the world looking for a better way to live, a better way to invest, an abundance of time and an abundance in time of scarcity for you. And so again, it's appealing to those needs, that mass desire.
Yeah. I had a couple of thoughts. One is, Jimmy Buffett has a real low rent version of this. I'm a cheeseburger in paradise. And the other thing is, I always see this on cop shows in an ironic way. Um, Teamwork makes the dream work. But anyway, yeah, very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The fifth lesson comes from the book How to Make Your Advertising Make Money from 1983. There is a paperback version of this available as well. And the lesson that John has, he closes this book with lessons he's learned through 50 years in advertising. And the lesson that I want to highlight is write long, boil it down. And what he says is when he was learning copy early on in his career, he had a copy chief that told him one of the great ways to write a small ad is to write a long ad first, then boil it down. That way you get to the broth, a pot of broth with more flavor. The more you boil it down, the stronger the flavor gets. And so it's this idea of writing fast when you're full of enthusiasm and passion, and then editing on the back end, editing to cut that copy down, chipping away that, perfect statue of David in the marble. You have to get rid of all the excess to get, yeah, yeah, this is David. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
You
the
have to,
David, Michelangelo, yeah.
yeah. And John says, when you write long and boil it down, if you need 500 words of copy, begin by writing 1,000 words, then boil it down to the concise, fact-packed message. And so, you have to get warmed up. It's like what Gary Halbert said. It's all about getting rid of that throat clearing, getting warmed up, getting in the groove as a writer, as the flow. And I find that, when new copywriters come to me and they want to write financial copy, I always teach them how to write short copy first, because if you try to write a 50-word email, it may not come across that good. But if you come in and you write an email that is 1,000 words maybe, and we chip it down to 300 words, it's always going to be much stronger, because you're going to be able to find that core idea and that message, get to the good stuff, and so I really think that when you learn how to edit short copy, by the time you get to the point to where you're writing long copy and promos, you're able to make every sentence punch, every line of copy have that power in it. Reading old classified ads is a great way to learn how to write short banner ads and subject lines. I saw something on LinkedIn last night that was a great example of this. It was a post on LinkedIn, and it said, remove unnecessary words that you don't need in sentences. And then it had the words that you don't need crossed out, because it's redundant. You don't need that, and so remove unnecessary words and sentences. And it's just a great way for copywriters to learn how to edit, because the more editing that you can do on your end as the writer before it goes to the client or the editor or the publisher, the stronger and the better the copy is going to be. It reminds me of the quote Mark Twain had. He said, writing a letter to a friend, he said, if I had more time, it would have been shorter.
That's such a great point. And I have a client who used to write a lot of affiliate emails for one of his clients that would go out in the health space to thousands and thousands of people, and through affiliates. And he tried this. I think it may have been by accident or without really intending to test it, but he had a long version and a short version. The short version always did better. And so we decided he was going to develop this method where he would just write out everything he could and then boil it down. It doesn't seem sense logically, but it actually, in reality, it works really well. So it's a great point.
Certainly. The last lesson comes from a biography called John Caples' Ad Man. This is a book by Gordon White from 1977. Gordon had written the introduction to the 5th edition of Tested Advertising Methods, if his name sounds familiar. But this was a biography about him. And in this, there's some correspondence between he and John, and what he's doing is he's talking about some of the lessons. And there was a guy that was John's mentor, John Caples' mentor, named Bruce Barton. And if you don't know, if you're listening to this episode and you don't know who Bruce Barton is, he's another old master worthy of study. Joe Vitale has a great book on him. And so Bruce Barton was the founder of the BBDO company that John Caples worked for. In talking about Bruce, John Caples' mentor, they're talking about what made him so successful as a copywriter. And John says he had, many great qualities without equal, but he had the 3 qualities that Tolstoy said was the most important in a writer: sincerity, sincerity, sincerity. And so the lesson is that the most important quality of a writer, a copywriter, a salesman in print, is sincerity. And I think that's true. Even beyond proof, even beyond channeling desire, even beyond, testimonials and a great offer, you have to start with sincerity. I kind of feel like that is the bookend for, John Caples' legacy, is being sincere, starting with testing, having good offers, testing headlines and leads, all the other copy tactics that we talked about today. But if at the end of the day, you're not sincere in your copy, people are going to see right through it. People are going to see right through it. So if you're not genuine, and this, even as a copywriter, when you're writing for clients or products, you can always tell the difference between a copywriter that believes in something that they're writing for and a copywriter that doesn't. The person that believes in it is going to have more passion, and that passion is going to shine through. And in fact, that passion for writing about that product can often make up for some mediocre copy. If you're passionate about the topic and the product, that might cover, some headline flaws or some editing flaws that you might miss. I saw a great example of this. This comes from a nonprofit. Of course, I started my copywriting career writing fundraisers for nonprofits. And this piece of copy does a couple of things. It says, right now, there are 771 million people that are drinking dirty water. Yet you can change that. When you donate to clean water, you are investing in the hopes, the dreams of families around the world. Children are able to attend school full time. Women can start businesses. Communities can thrive. When you give to Charity Water, 100% of your donation goes directly to funding water solutions in rural communities. We won't stop until everyone everywhere has access to clean water, but we need our monthly giving community. And then it goes into the pitch. And the reason why I think that is so sincere is that when you actually look at this founder's story, I mean, just the proof behind it is incredible. This guy has traveled the world building these wells, but the key line in it is that 100% of the donation goes directly to funding water solutions. And in nonprofits, that's key because unfortunately, many times when somebody donates, $10, $8 of that or $9 of that, goes to overhead for the nonprofit. They go to salaries and they go to equipment, and it's not necessarily being used towards the mission. And so they really overcome that objection that they know most people giving have up front. An example of insincere copy, uh, you can look at any statement any politician has ever made, and that's probably an example of insincere copy. There is an example here recently. I'm not to disparage this brand by any means, but in the direct response world, I knew people that were at this company, but Liver King. There, I don't know if you've seen that over the last month.
I've seen a lot of people disparaging them, but I don't know who they are.
Yeah, basically, this guy, founder of Ancestral Supplements, that used direct response copywriting and kind of became an influencer over the last couple of years, was this jacked, beefed up dude, and in all of his material, copy material, is all about eating like a caveman and getting back to our ancestral roots. And people were accusing him of taking steroids for 2 years or more, and he just always denied it. And the copy was always, we only recommend natural supplements and eating raw meat and all this kind of stuff, this carnivore diet. Well, it came out, it was exposed that he's been, buying $13,000 worth of steroids over the last several years. And so there's this disconnect between this message that is saying eat naturally, take, food and vitamins from the earth and eat meat and don't do steroids, kids. And yet come to find out, he's doing all these steroids and things. And so it's just a perfect example. It's the same thing with, the politician or whoever, that says one thing to one audience, and then you find out behind closed doors, there's a discrepancy there with belief and actions, or words and actions. And so sincerity is the most important quality of a writer, per John Caples. And I agree with it, David.
I do too. Yesterday I saw a TV interview of Cameron Crowe, the great movie director. He has a play on Broadway now, former Rolling Stone reporter. And he said something really interesting. He said that when he created a character, he didn't imagine a character. He thought of a person he knew or he had interacted with, and he created the character from that. And he said, I try to create characters that people will miss a little when they're gone.
That's good.
Another way of describing sincerity. I mean, you mentioned Tolstoy. We can learn a lot from people who do fiction and drama because they have, if they can't be believed, they're not going to sell their stuff either.
Absolutely. The best movies are when you can't tell that the actor is acting.
Yeah.
So these the 6 lessons from John Caples, number 1, profit by removing the guesswork and testing in all of your advertising. Number 2, secure testimonials with contest, giveaways, engagement campaigns with your prospects. Lesson number 3, appeal to the lazy instinct. Remember, people, I believe in general, are bored, lazy, and selfish. They want to be smart, rich, and powerful or popular. Number 4, use the value of illusion. Appeal to the emotional and psychological desires of your market. Number 5, write long and boil it down. Write long and boil it down. And number 6, the most important quality of any copywriter is sincerity. And if you use it rightly, if you use it right, it can overcome mediocre copy. So
that's good.
First of all, Joshua, thank you so much for coming on. I can tell that you put a lot of work into this episode, and we definitely appreciate it. I know the listeners appreciate it as well. The second thing, I did want to get a clarification from you. David, on the warning on each episode, he talks about being sure that your copy is compliant. And having written in fintech and in the health industry, I know that there's always some landmines to avoid, especially when it comes to testimonials and rewarding people for testimonials. And since you work for Agora, I'd like to get your thoughts on that real quick before we leave, just to clarify the second point that you had.
I don't think per the SEC, even because I've worked with banks and insurance companies before landing at Agora, it's illegal to pay people for testimonials in a financial, investment space, I believe. And so like if you're a financial advisor or something at Merrill Lynch and you were paying people to give testimony, like that would be illegal. There's compliance officers. The same is true. I don't know if it's quite illegal, but it's something we don't do in Agora and in financial is like we obviously can't pay people for testimonials. There has been, and I'm not going to get into it here, but if anybody is interested, there's a very public lawsuit between the SEC and Agora that is very easy to find online. And we do have lawyers that we work with from those institutions, from the FCC, the FTCC, and things like that, to where there are requirements of how we frame testimonials, things like having a beginning stake, a time frame, things like that, qualifications when we give lifestyle claims. But when we do things like what I said earlier about future pacing a benefit, where I ask the customer, how would you spend $100,000? That's that kind of neat little workaround, I guess. Because again, it's not really a testimonial, but it's a story, a statement, a claim, an articulation of a
You know what
promise.
it is? You know what it is? It's here's why I want to get the result you're promising. That's what it is.
And that serves as proof for other people that are watching it that say, I want that same result.
Like it almost gives them permission to want it. It's no proof that you're going to deliver it or that
Yeah.
they're going to get it. It's just that it's okay to want this,
Yeah,
which is the
exactly.
big thing.
Exactly. In that good, and Nathan, I appreciate that, because in that chapter, John actually talks about places like General Mills that were, paying people $25 to describe how they eat bread every day, for their sandwiches, for lunchtime, their toast for breakfast, their dinner, roll with the butter, and he talks about all these companies that were paying for testimonials. I think it kind of depends on maybe the industry, the niche. There are other ways to reward people that are not monetary. A lot of times real estate agents will give away, a TV or something, if they get a listing or something like that, a referral. And so there are ways around it, but of course, do whatever is legal maybe for you or right for your industry.
Yeah, I know that sometimes banks and credit unions will give away free toasters for any recommendations and stuff like that. So I just wanted to get some clarification on that. It's an important thing, and we go over it at the beginning of every episode, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Again, Joshua's just a wealth of information and collected from all over the place. So I really appreciate all the work that you put into this. Before we let you go, is there anything that you would like to direct our listeners' attention to?
Yeah, I think one of the things would be the world of financial copywriting that I've put together with Kevin Rogers at Copy Chief, a friend of the podcast, and we've got all the information in the show description, I believe. But for anybody that is considering getting into financial copywriting, whether you want to work for Agora or something else, when I look at the landscape of financial publishing right now and financial copywriting in general, we've got crypto, we've got Robinhood, we've got NFTs, we've got gold, silver, raw land, alternative investments. This has been a very rough year for the markets, 2022. 2023, we've got CPI reports coming out. Inflation is still here. Interest rates are still here. People are looking for money. Again, John Caples said, that money, that rich is, in all of his tests, that was the second most successful appeal, is if you can appeal for wealth and riches and money. And so there's a tremendous opportunity here for anybody that wants to get into that niche. And I really believe that the world of financial copywriting, a program that Kevin and I built in partnership with Agora, is the best way to do that. And so all the information is in the link in the description below. We've got people that aren't even in financial copy. People that, one guy owns a t-shirt printing store, but he knows that if you can write financial copy at that level, those principles and lessons, things that I've talked about on this podcast, are going to be applicable to whatever niche that, somebody may be in.
I think it was John D. Rockefeller that said the best time to buy is when blood is running in the streets. So if you're not paying attention to financial copywriting right now, you probably should be.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, one more time, where can people go if they want to check that out?
We've got a link. It's a long link, so we got a short link in the show notes.
Yeah, and my email, I think we had that in the show notes as well. So I'm open for email and LinkedIn messages if anybody has any questions or comments or wants to continue the conversation offline.
Thank you, Joshua. So much information, man. We really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you head on over to copywriterspodcast.com to check out more, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Yep.